This is what we've done so far. I'll keep putting this up. Today we're going to do human resources. If I give you a form of business question on a exam, well, if you start a business, partnership or corporation, then, you got to hire people. So it's one of those things that as we go forward, you're going to see more and more that start layering on top of each other. Right? Which is why I leave all this up here, because we will eventually fill up 3 boards. Speaking of which, has anybody got a pickup truck or a big SUV? All right, human resources. When I was in business school at your age, we didn't take human resources. You might have covered it one day in a management class. Human resources was not considered a big deal. And most human resources departments consisted of one person, maybe the CEO's secretary, and their job was to have the Christmas party every year, and sign the paychecks every Friday. That was about the extent of the human resources. Now, if I was to draw you a flow chart of a 5,000 employee company or a 100 employee company, the human resources department is going to be at a vice presidential level. Right? The human resources department for the college reports directly to the head dean. So it's become a much more important thing. Why? Why? Why can't we have one person and the CEO calls and says, I want you to fire JC? Why can't you just have one person? Why?
That's too biased.
Too biased. Law. You just can't do it anymore. All right? You just can't do it anymore. You have to jump through the hoops to hire somebody or fire somebody. We can focus on human. What other kind of resources do you have in a corporation or a partnership in order to do business?
Their assets.
Okay? Assets. Utilities. Water. Vendors. Wholesale. And maybe 100 things. Whatever you have to do to run the business, whatever you have to make your product, is a resource for that business. Well, labor is maybe the largest resource that you have to have. All right? Labor is expensive and you need to do it well. To show you how, give you a couple of human resource stories. Within 20 years ago, there is a company in Aiken, South Carolina called Ohio Brass. And they make a brass pump like you'd put in an air conditioner or something. It's about that big. It's in a building about the size of the Science and Math building, and it's on an assembly line, and somebody screws in 2 screws and then hands it to the person next to them, and they put on a valve and they hand it to the person next to them, puts on 2 washers, and it goes all the way through the building, and they make these pumps. Employs 100 people. At the time, they had 1 human resources guy. And Christmas comes around, and the CEO gives the human resources guy 100 Walmart cards for $50. 20 years ago, $50 was a pretty good gift. And the human resources guy goes through the factory, Merry Christmas from Ohio Brass, Merry Christmas from Ohio Brass, and hands out the cards. Turns out that that day, they didn't have but 98 employees. Maybe they had 98, and then 102, and then 100. I mean, kind of rotated, depends on whether somebody was hired or fired. But he kept the other 2 Walmart cards and just put them in a drawer underneath his desk. Didn't even think anything else about it. A couple of months passed, because these were Christmas presents. A couple of months passed, the beginning of the year comes, and they have their accounting audit, where they go in and audit everything in the business. How many screwdrivers, how many screws, how many trucks. And the CEO, or the manager, the CEO was in Columbus, Ohio, but the manager of that 100 employee building comes to him and says, "Where are those other 2 Walmart cards?" And he said, "Well, to be honest with you, I bought my daughter's birthday party with them, birthday present with them." And they fired him. 40-year-old man, 3 children, fired over $100. So that's a tragic story to me, but the importance of human resources cannot be stressed enough. Okay, it cannot be stressed enough. You can't steal, you can't screw around with people. You gotta do ethics. The other human resource that I want to tell you about is a word named outsourcing. If human resources shows up on an exam in any way, I'd like to see that word. Does anybody know what it means?
Like get something somewhere else.
Good. Get something from somewhere else. All right? You may get, get the baseball bat from somewhere else. But what are we talking about with human resources? Talking about people. There is a huge industry that has popped up in the last 10 or 15 years. There is a company in Greenville, South Carolina called HTI, which is Human Technologies, Inc. You don't have to know that. HTI has 3,000 employees. And what they do is BMW in Spartanburg, we're going to try a new brake pad on our cars. And we need 100 people for 6 months. They don't want to hire 100 people, knowing that in 6 months they have to fire them. They don't want to go through the process of withdrawing taxes, having to send W-2 forms, having to worry about health insurance. All they need is 100 bodies to help them put those brake pads on for 6 months. So they call a company like HTI and they outsource it. And HTI sends them 100 employees for 6 months. HTI has over 3,000 employees all over the Southeast. And it's kind of like a traveling nurse. You heard traveling nurses. They go 6 months to one hospital and then they go to another hospital wherever there's a need. Well, they'll take these 100 people, and then when BMW is finished with them, they may send 50 of them to Mississippi to do cotton shirts. And they may send 25 of them over to Spartanburg, to Michelin, to make tires. And they move them around. HTI covers the health insurance, covers the taxes, covers all of the benefits. Well, how does that benefit BMW, and how does HTI make the money? BMW is paying $15 an hour. And that's what they'll pay those 100 people. But BMW pays HTI $19 an hour for those 100 people. So for every hour they work, HTI makes $4. Well, that doesn't sound like a lot of money until you do the math. All right, they're getting 100 people times 8 hours times 40 hours a week times 6 months times $4. That's a heck of a lot of money. That's a heck of a lot of money. The founder of HCI is 50 years old. He found this business 20 years ago by himself. He would knock on doors and say, "You need any employees?" And they would say, "Yeah, we need 2 people." And he would go rent a room at the Holiday Inn and put an ad in the paper and find 2 people. And he would then go say, "Hey, here are your 2 employees." And he's now a multi-millionaire. And it's a huge company. They have offices all over, from Indiana to Mississippi to Texas, all up and down the East Coast. That is outsourcing. A second part of outsourcing are temps, where you have like temporary secretaries or temporary nurses, and you send them somewhere for a week. You know, and it's not as big a deal as the outsourcing. So until we need outsourcing, and not talking about physical resources, we've got human resources. So the easiest way, I think, to learn about that is think about it in a circle. The CEO tells the human resources we need 50 people. First thing the human resources do is they make a plan. What do they do when they make a plan?
Go over the 5 decision makers.
Huh?
Go over the 5 decision makers.
The 5 decision makers. Good. There's a reason I leave all of this up here. What else?
Well, you can plan through a SWOT.
Great. Do a SWOT. The HR department does a SWOT before they hire the 50 people. And they say, what are our strengths? What are our strengths? Well, we've got a good reputation. We're a good company. People should enjoy working for us. What are our weaknesses? Right? The fact that they need employees is a weakness. Maybe they have high competition. I don't know. But the human resources knows that they have to take care of the weaknesses. What are the opportunities? The opportunity is to expand. What are the threats? Bad employees. Maybe we don't hire good people. So they do a SWOT. And the SWOT is going to be a little bit different for each job. So now that they've done the SWOT, they have to recruit and train. How do you recruit nowadays? Online. So you do everything online. I think my wife would have sex online. She didn't have to deal with me. All right. Recruit. When I was your age, this is how they would recruit. You'd put an ad in the newspaper, and you'd say, I'll be at the Holiday Inn on Monday from 8 till 2. Please come to room 108 and bring your resume. That's how you'd recruit. And then it got from that to where you could send it in by mail, by email. Email was a big deal. And now you can do it online. You know, I have a LinkedIn account. Anybody got LinkedIn? Okay. I have a LinkedIn account. I really don't post anything, but I look at it a couple of times a day. If you have a LinkedIn account, you should follow Venture South, which is my son's company. They post nice articles, every couple of times about starting business and entrepreneurs. You should follow Harvard Business School. They post little paragraphs on business that are good. So we're going to recruit online. How else? Referrals. I don't mean referrals like me giving you a recommendation letter. This is referrals from friends, people you go to church with, people you knew in college, people that you go out to eat and drink a beer with on Friday night and they told you, I don't like my job. And you find out your company's hiring. You say, hey, I got a buddy that doesn't like their job. That word of mouth is still a big recruiting aspect. So we've recruited 50 people. Now we have to train them. Now when just not only probably 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, the way you train somebody is I would send them to Tristan, and he's managing 10 people. Monday at 8 o'clock, somebody comes in and Tristan says, who are you? And they say, well, I'm your new employee. They told me to be here at 8 o'clock and introduce myself. All right. So he's got to train them. He's got to meet them. He's got to introduce them. He's got to make sure they're working with other people well. It's totally responsible for that supervisor. Now training is a 60 to 90 days, maybe longer. Why? Why does it take so long to train somebody? The machines are the same. The computers are the same. Why does it take longer to train people? We haven't talked a lot about it in here, but I think I told you early in the semester that every business nowadays has a mission statement. Newberry College has 4 or 5. When you train somebody, you're training them to meet the mission statement. Right? You're training them to do the work, be a better person, not discriminate, don't sexually harass anybody, don't hit anybody, don't fight with anybody, don't come in drunk. Things that used to be taken for granted, now you have to sit through films and PowerPoints. When I was hired, I'd been a lawyer for 20 years. I had been an HR representative for a company for 350 employees that I started from scratch. I'd run 2 country clubs, and I came to work here, and I had a 60-day training that I had to go to. And I had to go sit in seminars, and learn about safety. Learn about equity, learn about inclusion, learn about, everything about how to be a good person. All of that is included in training nowadays, not only to match the mission statement, but what else? You said earlier, what else? You don't want anybody getting your company sued, right? You don't want anybody getting their company sued. So, if used to, it didn't make a big deal, but now it's a big deal, okay? So, we're having intramural soccer. Intramural soccer. Boys and girls playing soccer, men and women playing soccer, 7-on-7, she scores a goal. Up until about 5 years ago, you would hit her on the butt and say, good job. Can't do that now. Okay, you can't do that now. You just can't. I taught my daughters, I said, if you go, my daughters now are 37, 38 years old, but when they were growing up, I said, if you go on a date and your date does not open the door for you, don't go on a date again with that guy. Right? Your parents probably taught you the same thing. Right? And, you know, if they're not going to open the door for you, don't go back to them again. You don't even have to tell them why, just turn down the date. I was taught when I opened the door for somebody, can I take your hand? I would help them out of the car, and then when I helped them through a door, I would walk them through the door. Not anymore. You can't do it. You can't do it. And that's why human resources think. Don't tell anybody. All right? So that's why human resources have become vice presidential levels. Because human resources controls people from doing things that otherwise they thought they could. And now that they can't. Okay, so you recruit and train, and the next thing you do is implement. You put them to work, and they go to work. What do you do after you put somebody to work? What's the next stage? Huh? Not yet. What do you got to do before you pay them? What's the coach do before he plays you? Huh? Why? Why are they watching you? What are they doing when they're watching you? Evaluate. Before you pay somebody, before you play a player, you evaluate them. So they train them, they recruit them, they train them, they put them to work, and then over a period of time, they evaluate them. What happens if they fail? No.
Evaluate them more.
Why do you not fire them? I just put it up here. You can't fire people anymore. It's against the law. If you're going to fire somebody, you got to go through hoops. It takes 60 days to fire somebody. Business law, you'll learn that. All right? So when they fail, what you do is you send them back to retrain, to get retrained. And what you're looking for is maybe the person that you sent to the computer department turns out he's a great truck driver. Maybe the woman that you sent to manufacturing to run the big machine actually has a knack with computers and needs to be in the computer department. Okay, so that's called cross-training. You retrain and you look for cross-training. Can we put this person somewhere else? Why do you want to do that? Money. By the time you started from right here to the time we got around here, the company has spent money on John and Jane Doe. And so they want to get their money out of John and Jane Doe. They want to put them to work. All right? Back row, y'all awake back there? Okay. So then they retrain, they put back to work, they then evaluated, and they pass, and then what do we get? Bobby, what do we get? Paid. See, you will find, I got any seniors in here? You will find that when you go to interviews, they don't tell you anymore, I'm going to pay you $75,000 for 5 years. I mean, unless you're going pro sports. I mean, if you go to work for somebody, they'll say, this is what we'll start you with. This is how you get promoted. This is how you get more money. So when you go to interview somebody, you've got to interview them, don't you? You've got to ask them questions. How do I get a raise? You know, what am I going to start? You've got to interview them as much as them interview you, because they're not going to set compensation on your first day at work. That's not the way it works anymore. You got to go through the process, and then you get your compensation. All right, and what's the last step? Then you can fire them. All right? You've gotten your money's worth, you've put them to work, and they just can't do the job, or ethics. They're stealing from you. Profit equals revenue minus expenses. They're costing you money. You try to keep them, but at some point you have to fire them. Now, I've used this illustration over and over. I saw an industrial sewing machine one time, and I just thought it was fascinating. An industrial sewing machine is about the size of that lobby out there. And they feed cloth into it, and a hoodie pops out the other side. You know, it's amazing. Right? Well, you got, let's say you are managing, let's say Edwin's managing a department that's got 10 industrial sewing machines. And so he's got 10 employees, male, female, tall, short, one in a wheelchair, black, white, gay, doesn't matter. He's got 10 employees running those industrial sewing machines, and he has to get 50 hoodies an hour. Because when the hoodies come out of this end, they go right out the door to the shipping, and they're trucked to somewhere else. And his supervisor says, hey, you're not getting but 49 an hour, 48 an hour, 49 an hour, 48 an hour. And Edwin's got to figure out where the problem is. So he studies it, runs a study, watches all the employees, and he finds that of the 10 people running those machines, that the person running the second machine has got kidney problems and has to go to the bathroom 4 or 5 times a day. And the bathroom is over here on the other side of the building. So him going to the bathroom is costing him 1 or 2 hoodies an hour. That is business. That is management. That is human resources. So what can Edwin do? Well, he can move that employee to the last machine so they're close to the bathroom. That's an easy solution. He can set the machines up. Instead of being in a line, it's 2 of 5. So the employee is closer to the bathroom. Right? And you have to do that in order to try to save the employee, to keep the employee. If none of that works, then you fire him. Right? Now, what time is it? Okay. 1964 Civil Rights Act. Martin Luther King, President Lyndon Johnson, they got it passed. It was a major thing, one of the greatest things, probably one of the top 10 things in American history. You cannot discriminate. You cannot discriminate at work due to race. But that's not all it said. It also said as to women, as to disabled, and then later as to gender or gender choice. So when you go to fire somebody, if they are what's called you actually don't have to know this word, but it's a good word. If they are a protected class, if they are within a protected class and you want to fire them, you have to jump through some hoops. And it should be that way. Okay? It's a fair law. But it does mean that for business, you can't just walk around and say, hey, you're fired. Okay, you can't do what the guy did with the Walmart cards now. After you fire people, then by then the circle starts over. You need another 10 employees, you need another 50 employees, and unless you're outsourcing them, you do a new SWAT, you do a new train, new recruit, and the circle starts over. Now, human resources, like I said a minute ago, is a big deal. It's also one of those things that just about anything I put up here on an exam, it's not hard to add a human resources to it. If you form a partnership that's going to make basketball shoes or basketballs or hockey sticks or whatever, you got to hire people. So if you form a partnership, you should tell me how you're going to hire people. You should tell me about human resources. If I give you a management problem, and I say you have formed, whatever corporation or partnership you have formed, management is having a problem running the company, and you are losing revenue, or your expenses are too high, and what are you going to do about your management? Well, if you're going to talk about management, you need to talk about human resources, because management is about people. And so if you're going to talk about management, tell me in the exam about human resources. For the rest of the semester, we're going to be moving pretty fast, and it's layering on top. Everything we talk about is just one more thing, to add on to how to run a business. All right?